Last Night's Stand, written by Brent Garza. Chapter 1. The Curb. Jake Foster was late, but that never stopped him from making an entrance. The neon glow from the Foxhole Bar splashed across the wet pavement as he crossed the last intersection, jacket collar up, stride loose and confident. Friday nights were his playground. He wasn't rich, he wasn't special, but he knew how to sweet talk, how to smirk, how to angle a compliment just enough to close the deal. Ever since his early 20s, one-night stands were the only thing that made him feel alive, fleeting little victories that kept the emptiness quiet for a few hours at a time. Brian was already waiting inside the bar, his best friend. His familiar presence always comforts Jake. They'd been best friends for years, working side by side at All-Star Auto Sales, and Jake could practically hear Brian's voice in his head. "You're late, you jackass." He smirked. It wasn't every night that something interesting crossed his path. However, tonight, interesting awaited him on what appeared to be a damp and gritty curb just a block away from the Foxhole pub. She sat with her knees pulled to her chest, mascara streaked down her cheeks like black rain, wearing a black dress that looked too elegant for the sidewalk she was crumpled on. Her purse was turned over, her makeup, pens, and other belongings were scattered like she'd dropped them mid-cry. She looked mid-30s, maybe even early 40s, with dark auburn hair, polished features, and a wedding ring pale indentation where one used to be. Jake slowed, recalibrated. Distressed women were not his usual strategy, but the opportunity presented itself like fate tapping him on the shoulder. "Hey," he said gently. "Rough night?" She got startled, wiping her face with trembling fingers. I'm sorry. I don't usually do this." Her voice cracked. "My name's Veronica." He knelt beside her, ignoring the wet pavement soaking his jeans, and asked softly, "You okay? Need help?" She laughed once, bitter, embarrassed. "I think I need professional help at this point, Jake," she said jokingly. He gave her his best soft smile, the one he frequently used. "Try me." Veronica studied him for a moment, as if deciding whether he was dangerous or desirable. "My husband died a year ago," she said quietly. "Tonight was our anniversary. I thought I could go out and pretend I was fine." She shook her head, but it just hit me. Jake placed her purse closer to her. "I'm sorry, really." "Most men don't stop," she whispered. "You did." Because most men aren't looking for reasons, he thought, but he kept that part to himself. Her hand brushed his. Intentional. Warm. "You don't have to be alone tonight," Jake said, his voice trembling slightly, revealing a flicker of vulnerability that made the moment more intense. It wasn't his smoothest moment, but grief made everything delicate. He adjusted his tone accordingly. Veronica's lips curved into a smile. "Come home with me." She said it fast, almost eager. He hesitated. Not out of morality, but because Brian was expecting him inside the bar. He thumbed out a quick message, "Running late, maybe not coming. Sorry, man." Jake winced as he hit send, a jerk move, yes. But Veronica was beautiful, vulnerable, and pressing close to him now with a desperation that felt like an invitation wrapped in tragedy. "Are you sure?" he asked. She nodded, glossy eyes but intense. "I don't want to be alone." That was enough for him. Veronica's home was nicer than he expected. 4 bedrooms, hardwood floors, faint lavender perfume drifting through the air like memory. Photographs lined almost every surface, her and a man with medium brown hair, warm smile, tall frame, deep brown eyes. Eyes not too different from Jake's. He paused at one frame, recognizing the uncanny resemblance. "That was Michael," Veronica said softly behind him. "My husband." Jake nodded. "You two looked happy." "We were." She slipped her fingers through his. "Let's not talk about sadness tonight." Her touch was insistent, clinging, and strange. But he let himself be pulled. Wine came next. It was rich and expensive, poured into crystal glasses. She kept watching him as if studying every move he made. The air felt heavy, not seductive, but expectant, like she was waiting for him to say something specific. He took a sip. It was smooth and stronger than he expected. Her gaze flicked to the glass with quiet satisfaction. "You remind me of him," Veronica murmured. Jake opened his mouth to joke, to lighten the mood, but the room tilted slightly. Had he drunk too fast? A strange sensation crept over him, and he blinked, steadying himself with a hand on the countertop, sensing that something was off. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm just..." His tongue felt numb. "Might need water or something." Veronica smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "You don't need water, Michael." Jake froze. My name's not. The floor burst upward as if someone pulled the world out from beneath him. His limbs went soft and unresponsive. The last thing he saw was Veronica leaning over him, brushing his hair back tenderly. "Welcome home," she whispered. Everything went black. Chapter 2. Maybe Not Coming. Brian's POV. Earlier that day. The showroom at All Star Auto Sales always smelled like a mix of cheap cologne and lemon floor polish, a scent that stuck to your clothes long after you clocked out. 8 cars were staged across the floor, polished to mirror shine, each one priced a little too high and marketed as the deal of the decade. Jake loved this place. Too much, in Brian's opinion. "Watch and learn, my guy," Jake said, already straightening his tie as he spotted a couple walking through the automatic doors. Brian leaned against a desk, arms folded. He already knew the show that was coming. Jake swaggered across the floor with his signature mix of confidence and cheesiness. He opened with his go-to line, the one Brian wished he could erase from existence. "Welcome in. I'm Jake Foster, the best closer this side of town. What are we upgrading you into today?" Brian rolled his eyes. The couple laughed. Actually laughed, like they were relieved someone this enthusiastic was helping them. Jake gestured so much when he spoke that Brian always thought he might accidentally smack a customer, but somehow it added to the appeal. He placed a hand on the hood of a silver sedan. "This beauty? She's not a car, she's a lifestyle. You don't drive her, she drives you toward better days." Brian muttered, "God help me." But the couple nodded, impressed. Jake launched into the same script he used on everyone: compliment their shoes, crack a joke, relate everything back to himself, and finish with something absurd like, "Trust me, you'll look like a snack pulling up in this." And like clockwork, the customers followed him to his desk. Every single time. Brian walked past him on the way to the break room. "You're unbelievable." Jake flashed a smug grin. "I'm gifted." "You're full of shit, but gifted," Jake said, pointing both index fingers at him. Brian couldn't argue. Jake made it look easy, and it bothered him more than he liked to admit. Brian was more honest, more straightforward, but honesty didn't always sell cars. Showmanship did. And Jake was the king of showmanship. The break room was a 6x8 shoebox with a flickering fluorescent light and a vending machine that ate dollars for sport. Brian sat at the tiny table, scrolling through inventory updates when Jake barged in like he owned the place. "Bro," Jake said, cracking a fresh energy drink. "Last night, unreal." Brian didn't look up. "Here we go." Jake popped the tab dramatically. "I'm telling you, this woman was next level. Blonde, heels, body like—" "I get it," Brian cut in. "No, you don't," Jake insisted. "She practically dragged me home." Brian finally set his phone down. "You ever think maybe you should slow down?" Jake froze mid-sip. "Slow down? Why?" "Because maybe one night shouldn't decide your whole mood for the next week." Jake scoffed. "Look, not all of us want to go home alone." Brian raised an eyebrow. "Used to be you didn't either." Jake went quiet for a beat. Just one beat. Then he shrugged it off. "Mindy ruined that? I'm just having fun." But Brian saw the crack, that quick flicker of pain Jake always tried to smother under bravado. "You were different before her," Brian said softly. "Yeah," Jake replied. "And look where that got me." He tightened his tie like he was trying to tighten his grip on himself. "Foxhole tonight?" Brian asked. Jake perked up instantly. "Hell yes, round 2. There it was again. The mask. Perfectly back in place. The Foxhole Bar, 8-9 p.m. Brian took the booth closest to the door. The lighting was dim, a mix of neon beer signs and warm bulbs that made the whole place look like an old photograph. He checked his phone. Nothing. The waitress dropped off a water. "Your buddy running late?" "He's always late," Brian said. The bar crowd drifted in waves, laughing, shouting, clinking glasses. A guy in a baseball cap told the same loud story 3 times in a row. Someone played pool too aggressively. 2 women argued in the bathroom doorway. Typical Friday. 8:26 p.m. Still nothing. 8:39 p.m. Brian texted, "You close?" At 8:47 his phone buzzed. "Jake running late. Maybe not coming. Sorry, man." Brian frowned. That wasn't Jake. Not Friday night Jake. Not the Jake who lived for this place. He typed, "You good?" No answer. Typing bubble. Gone. Typing bubble. Gone again. Brian put the phone down. That's when he spotted her. A woman with dark hair sitting alone at the bar. Still. Too still. Earlier, when he first arrived, she had been in the same seat. Same posture. Same untouched drink. Now she was angled toward him, not enough to look obvious, but enough to feel intentional. Her expression wasn't flirtatious or confrontational. It was evaluating, like she knew him, like she expected him. Brian looked away to avoid eye contact. When he looked back, her seat was empty. No purse, no drink, no sign she'd ever been there. A cold ripple pricked down his spine. He told himself it was nothing. A trick of the light, a stressed out mind, the bar's atmosphere. But deep down, he felt the truth. Something had just shifted, something connected to Jake. And whatever it was, it had already begun.